Hey everyone, it's me, Sean Capri, and welcome to 2018, and welcome to episode 122 of We the GamerCast. It's the official podcast of WeTheNerdy.com, and it comes to you on iTunes, Google Play, and mother-loving YouTube every Monday. Thank you for subscribing, hitting the thumbs up. If you're watching the video now, would be a great time to hit the thumbs up, and thank you for rating us on iTunes and sharing, and welcome back. Whew! It's been a while since I did this in the middle of the day. Lincoln is getting ready to go to his grandparents' house. I'm going to my parents' house in a little bit, so I'm going to record a little segment, and then I'm going to wash up. I've been growing this beard. You can see this is the sadness over the holidays beard. I think that's what that is. This is laziness. I am about to go back to work and maybe even wear different clothes on Tuesday than I was on Monday or Wednesday and etc. I think I've gone through maybe like 4 shirts in the last 2 weeks, and it's been awesome. It's been really great. I have been catching up on so many games, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. If you guys are new, here's the deal. Every week, I have sweet hangs with a stranger from the internet, and we talk about video games, and if you want to be part of the show, if you want to be on it, tweet at me, at Sean Capri, Sean like Connor, Capri like the pants. And it's coming to you on YouTube, by the way, if you forgot or if you're new, because of amazing people at patreon.com/makeusbetter. We keep making this show better because of you, and it's all thanks to everybody there, especially our executive producers, including our platinum executive producer, Corey Hicks, gold executive producer, Sheldon, Benedict, and all of our gentlemen executive producers, Nick Milicia from Next Level Games, James Johnston, Dr. Doom, Jesse Armstrong, Glauco, Shaffer, David Ray, Mike Drummie, Brendan Myers, Aaron Doherty, and Martini Jean, our newest patron, is a gentleman executive producer. Even if this is the only show where you're called that, that's okay. It's just between me and you, guys. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. 2017 was one for the books, and 2018, I would like to say that I'm re-energized. That's what you're supposed to say, I think. I am re-energizing, I think. I mentioned on the last show, before Christmas, I went to see a therapist for the first time. I had a really, really rough couple of days. Just coming off of work, getting into the holidays and trying to find my place, I guess, here, and really just like at home. I mean, like trying to find like, sort of like a full-time, what is my role when I'm at home? And of course I'm here on the weekends, but I don't know. I was in a, none of it really makes I'm still trying to like kind of workshop, obviously, through what happened. Why do I get into some of these moves? But it's just, I don't want to get too much into it, but like, to be honest with you guys, like, I just didn't have energy. I just didn't have anything in me. And I guess one of the ways that I was describing it actually was I felt like I was being a draw, like a negative energy where I was sucking life out of the rooms that I was in instead of being the positive light and instead of being the positive energy. And I'm trying to flip that switch. I don't want to be a draw. I don't necessarily need to be the center of attention. But I don't want like people to feel sorry. I don't want to bring the mood down. I want to be able to, at the very least, make no difference in whatever is happening. In the best case scenario, add a little positivity. And I felt like I wasn't doing either. I think that's one way to describe it. So, New Year's resolutions, Capris, that's an awful pun. Obviously, get in better shape. I ate like crap over the last couple weeks. That also doesn't help, by the way. Just be a little bit organized. You know, the typical kind of like 2018, but I think it all stems from just going to actually work on myself, not just say that I'm working on myself. So that means some recurring therapy sessions, man. That's what I always kind of like chalk this up to that, but this year, I have to make time for it, make it a priority, and I think that I can. You know, I've stopped playing soccer. I've stopped a couple of things, and I think I can make it work. So you guys are on this ride with me. If you're still here, thank you so much. If this sort of like terrifies you, or if this isn't really what you're looking for in a podcast, I totally understand. That's kind of why I've avoided kind of talking about it for a long time, because it's not for everybody, but that's where we are in January 2018. It's going to be a ride. On the funner side, this maybe just add to my stress. I want to play more games. I want to I don't know. What are your guys' resolutions? I just bought a whole bunch of games on all these sales, more than I have time for, but I want to get to as many as I can, and maybe I need to solidify sort of an approach on them. Maybe I don't necessarily need to beat all of them. I'm playing Wolfenstein 2 right now, and I'm really liking it. I appreciate everything that's there. It's not like in it. I'm not in it. I'm playing it to kind of like get to the end, and I just sort of looked up how far I am, which sometimes is a mistake when you look at a walkthrough and then you see spoilers like just in the chapter titles and stuff like that, which didn't necessarily happen here, but I'm always worried about that. So Wolfenstein is really great. Cutscenes are amazing. The gunplay is good, but I don't know. There's just a lot else. So I might move on to, I don't know, man. Maybe The Evil Within 2. I bought The Mummy Demastered thanks to a recommendation from my good friend Ryan Turford from the Game Moves podcast. And I need to talk to him about that because I can't decide if it's the best or the worst game I've ever played, or at least the best or the worst Metroid knockoff. Like, it is so... It has nothing really to do with the movie The Mummy, but it's a good time. The one thing that it does is it makes me feel good about myself in terms of, oh, I can actually play this Metroid ripoff, because whenever I think Metroid, I think super difficult. This isn't too bad. So honestly, guys, like, I've got a list of probably like 14 games I've been firing into. That's way too much for today. I just want to let you know that I'm doing okay. And that I will continue to be working on feeling okay. I need to be better in that sense. So who knows where 2018 will take me? I'm not sure, but I do know that I'll be seeing somebody about it on a regular basis. How often? That depends on insurance, everybody. So we will see. I'm excited. If you're on YouTube, you'll notice maybe a little crispness. Maybe you can see a new hue in the pinkness in my cheeks because I get a little excited and I get a little hot in this small room with a computer that's firing all this heat out the top of it. New webcam for Christmas, and that is amazing. I think it looks great. So this show continues to get better. And you know what, guys? We're gonna cut this right here. We're going to get into the show. My guest today is Chris Johnston. Just to continue on the Johnsons and Johnstons that we've had over the last little bit, we're going to continue it on into 2018. And if you know anybody with the last name Johnson or Johnston, let's keep it up, man, because apparently you guys all like anime, so we're going to get into that with Chris in a bit. I am so appreciative that Chris took some time and talked to my awkward ass today. It's been a while, man, since I actually did this. It's actually been a very long time since I talked to somebody I've never actually spoken to before. Chris and I had a couple brief exchanges on Twitter, but other than that, like, this is the essence of We the GamerCast. We really never talked to each other at all. We are truly strangers on the internet, and we got to know one another a little bit. I wanted to ask him about his days at EGM and Adult Swim right now and Player One Podcast. Remember, you can follow Chris on Twitter. He's at SuperPack, and I'm so embarrassed that I didn't understand where that was from, but I'm not going to mention it. Maybe you don't know where it is, and maybe you can be embarrassed when he explains it, and then you can let me know. You can also follow Adult Swim Games at Adult Swim Games, his podcast at P1 Podcast. Let's get into it. Let's talk to Chris Johnston.
It is. Congrats on being a new father, by the way.
Thank you.
Father high five.
High five. My wife takes care of him like an absolute all-star. I'm just here. I'm supposed to collect things apparently on this shelf. And,
hey, I'm right there with you,
dude. I'm kind of enjoying the backdrops that we both have.
Yeah.
What do you got back there? I see some PS2. I've never really had a chance to really
everything really. My Xbox stuff's back there. Xbox 360, a lot of Japanese PS2 stuff.
How did you go about that? Because like Japanese PS2, like that's in a pre-eBay era, I'm thinking.
Yeah, all of that was pre-eBay.
Yeah, like how do you, so is that garage sale stuff? Like, are you flying back and forth to Japan in those days?
In those days, yeah, I was actually. So a lot of those I bought at game stores in Japan, and yeah, some of them I haven't even opened yet. I do have a Japanese PS2 that still works. So one of these days I should open some of those games and try them.
But how do you go about even doing that? Like, I've heard this story 100 times over of Andrew Goldfarb from IGN playing Persona 5 in Japanese. First, he platinumed it in Japanese. Like, are you able? That just seems like pure magic to me. I don't understand it. Like, how useful is this Japanese PS2 to you?
Well, now not very, but back in the day, it was pretty useful.
Yeah.
I took a little bit of Japanese at
nice.
the local community college in Chicago, where I lived, and enough where I can kind of you can like throw up a Japanese menu of things, and I can tell which thing to click on and which thing not to click on.
No way.
But that's about it. That's pretty much the extent of my Japanese knowledge at this point.
I mean, this might be crude. I think white people who speak Japanese is like the craziest thing. Like when I see Bill Trendon just like flipping on, I'm like, what is happening? How is that possible?
Yeah.
I freaking love it.
I can't do it. I took 2 years probably at this community college, and I've lost pretty much all of it except for some katakana, because that's the alphabet they use to do foreign words. So a lot of video game titles are in katakana, and then I know the hiragana alphabet and can kind of work my way through some words, but not enough to play Persona 5 in Japanese.
He didn't know any of it. I feel like you got to be a little further along than Andrew Goldfarb. But I don't know if it's something that, like, who has time for that really? Like, who has? Like,
I do.
I'll make this impossible and just do this in a totally different language.
Yeah, but I knew people back in the day who would import games from Japan without like a FAQ or without Twitter's help or anything like that, work through these games, and especially RPGs, and I just can't imagine doing that.
What's the motivate? Is it just a point of pride? Like, is it a badge of honor to say, I played this in Jap? Like, why do people, like, what enjoyment? I feel like I'm missing something.
Well, for some people, I think it's just they are anticipating that next game so much, especially if it's like a Final Fantasy or like a Persona, and they need to play it right away. They can't deal with the amount of lag that it takes to get it out in the US. Even though now, I mean, there's such a short lag time with Japanese releases. Back then, it was, half a year or more that you'd have to wait.
That's the thing that I've sort of forgotten, was that was just part of the way things were back when we were growing up, was there's this huge delay. But now it's kind of like worldwide releases have become a little bit more common, so you just don't even think of, like, why would you want to get the jump on anything. So are you like more partial to the more Japanese centric, or are you more like Western style of games? I know Nintendo dominated your top 10 list that you guys did on Player One podcast, which I love, by the way. I have to say, I've just discovered the show, but I love that you guys play. Obviously, I'm looking right behind you. Play everything, and to have Nintendo still dominate is so refreshing. I think that usually you get that with like Nintendo centric shows, but to have where you guys are playing everything or as much as you can and still have Nintendo kind of at the top is, I think, very 1995.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean,
and that's not a slate.
It's kind of gone in waves, though.
Yeah.
Player One has been going for 11 years now.
2006 was your first episode?
Yeah, 2006.
Was like podcasting even a thing? Like, were you guys like just exchanging letters? Is that kind of what was happening?
It was a thing. There
you
was
guys were
Major
bleeding
Nelson
edge.
and One Up Yours and a couple others. The Cheap Ass Gamer podcast was going on back then, and we kind of thought, we could do that. This will be fun. And none of us lived. We all used to work together, all of the hosts on the show, and we thought, hey, it'd still be fun to hop on Skype every week and catch up with each other on what we've been playing and record it and release it as a podcast, because One Up Yours was very popular, and we thought, hey, we could do this. We could totally do a podcast. And then somehow, I didn't think it was going to get past episode 10. We've done 582 of them. By this point.
And you guys still list it off at the start of every show. We're at episode, and like, does that kind of get like, this is a stupid number. Like, this is just insane.
Yeah.
But also the point of pride.
Yeah. As we've gotten up there, as you get to like the milestone episodes, you kind of say, well, why has this gone on this long? Like, you're at episode 492. You're like, are we really going to do 500?
Yep.
And then now we're on 582, looking down the barrel of 600, and it's like, yeah, I guess we're doing 600, and we've only missed like 1 or 2 weeks in that time.
In the 11 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's insane. So, like, when you guys first started out, but, like, I guess there was enough of it. Like, for now, just everybody and their dog has a podcast. Hi, we're right here. And it's because we've seen podcasts come for us. But I'm guessing, or I'm sensing from you that in 2006, there was still enough action going on that, like, it sparked the idea? Or was it as simple as that? Or was there, like, more to wanting? Like, did you have anything in mind, I guess, is my question, of where you wanted to take it, or what did you want to do with it, or anything like that?
No,
or it's just friends being
like
friends.
That. No plan whatsoever.
Yeah,
we thought we could do a show, something that we would want to listen to, and just kind of.
It's a good start.
Friends talking about video games, right? I think that any successful podcast or any fun podcast has that chemistry, right? It sounds like friends sitting around talking about video games. So
friends who just happened to work at EGM back in the day.
Yeah,
just like anybody else. Just
exactly. That's right.
Guys are publishing games for over 10 years. Like, it's the same.
Exactly. I think this is the case with a lot of magazines and outlets. You sit there and you have conversations about video games that aren't reflected in the pages of the magazine, or that people might be interested in. I mean, I listen to the Game Informer show, and they do the same thing. They all work together, and they still somehow lay down an hour-and-a-half show every week talking about games. I'm sure they've had very similar conversations to the ones that they're having on the show, just around the office, right? So that was part of it, and especially since we didn't live anywhere near each other at that time.
And you never did? Like, what about when you worked for the magazine? Like, were you still disparate?
Oh, no. When we worked for the magazine, we were all living in the same place.
Okay.
In Chicago and then San Francisco. I was roommates with Phil, actually, who's on the show as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was fun, Yeah. It's like any sort of 20-something gaming roommate situation. Like, we play a lot of stuff for review and critique each other's gaming abilities.
Of course.
It was fun for sure.
Did you have to like capture any, because like getting screenshots or gameplay or anything like that was so different back then? How like were you responsible for any of that kind of stuff as you were playing in this in this door? So how did you do it? Like, was it because way back I think you'd have like this dark room and a camera set up next, like literally taking a photo of the TV? Like, if you go far, is that how you did it as well?
That is not how we did it, no. Although I will say, before I worked at EGM, I went to the Consumer Electronics Show and saw EGM editors with a big, like, dark cone, basically, that they would put over the televisions at CES.
Right.
And take still photographs of the games.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? Imagine this slowdown of the whole like E3. If like, hang on a second, I need to capture some stuff for my blog, and you just have like, it would be, I'm imagining the similar like contraption that we had for GoldenEye 64. We put up like this cardboard box so that you couldn't see.
Exactly.
And the best thing about the internet now is that you discover you are not that unique. Like, we thought we had come up with this like first in the world invention, and now I'm talking everybody did that. Everybody had the same problem. They were all cheating.
Yeah, well, now it's as easy as like getting a capture box and plugging the HDMI output into it, and you can take capture footage at an event, no problem.
Right.
But obviously, back then it was a different issue. But we had custom capture cards in our Macs, and it was a Photoshop extension where you opened up the little window and you could press the S key on your keyboard and take a screenshot. You could also take a movie, but it would take it at like 4 frames a second, so you were not guaranteed to get the exact shot that you wanted. And my favorite part about this was there's a game, Kirby's Tilt and Tumble, on the GBC, I think.
What in the world?
We had this device. You remember the tilt games for the Game Boy, where you would it had a sensor in it, and it was a Kirby game where he was a little ball and just rolling around the stage.
I don't remember that at all. That's amazing. I need to find this.
It was a great game. Anyway, so
somebody out there is going to remember that.
I was reviewing it or doing a preview, but anyway, to capture screens from it, we had this contraption called a Wide Boy for the N64 that basically it was like a cartridge. It was like the Super Game Boy, and you put your cartridge in, or you put a Game Boy Color cartridge in there, and you could play it on a TV. But to do the tilt thing, what you had to do, because it expected that it was going to be in a Game Boy, and you were going to be looking at it this way, right? Or looking at it a certain way. You had to basically take the N64, because the cartridge was plugged into that. You had to hold it in your hands upside down.
No way. And
then with a pinky finger, while you're playing, try to hit the S key to take a screenshot at the right time. It was the most difficult thing.
That's all because it's built into the cartridge. Like, of course, that's why it's upside down and backwards or whatever. And, that is... So they've been up to this for a little while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Nintendo's been doing motion control for a long time.
Holy crap.
That made it very difficult to take screens off of that game. Yeah. Or occasionally we would get somebody else who was in the office in the cube next to us, or I would get Greg, who was in the cube next to me, and have him hit the S key for me, like when he thought a good screenshot was coming up, so that I could focus on playing. Because it had a preview window, but when you hit S, it would like pause the screen a little bit, so you couldn't like play a fast action game that way. You had to have it where you could look at the TV and also press S. It was very, very difficult to do.
So how was it working? So like growing up in I guess in your formative years in the 20s and working at EGM, how was this different for you than maybe even like growing up? Like for me, I had my neighbor, everybody knows my neighbor Matt and I, we had like, apparently it's called a friendship gate between our backyards. Like there was literally like a gate that we could pass through our backyards. You didn't have to go outside. We could just, like, our backyards were basically connected. And growing up, I didn't know that was unique either. Or I thought that that's what everybody's backyard was like. And like I would never, now having my own house, like there's no way I'm splitting my fence and having it go to the neighbor's house. So, but I had basically every game that I could ever imagine playing over there, and I had a friend who I could always play games with. So I'm always curious of like, was this in stark contrast to your childhood, just having people that you could geek out every single day and just obsess over the stuff that you want to obsess over, or was it a little different kind of growing up?
You mean working at the magazine versus...
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, like, or was this sort of like, I grew up with a whole bunch of friends, and then in my professional life, I'm with friends who also like games. Like, have you always been surrounded by people who love games, or was this kind of like a nice escape in a way?
No, pretty much. I've always been surrounded by people who liked video games.
Yeah.
My neighbors growing up played video games, went over to their house and played DuckTales on the NES.
Oh, yeah, man.
And when Super Mario Brothers 2 came out, there was a cartridge shortage at that time, and my friends' parents had driven them to the toy store before we were able to get there, and they bought us a copy of the game because it was about to be sold out.
No way!
Yeah, and that was super awesome. Like, I still thank them for that to this day, because that was a great game back in the day.
That's so nice!
Yeah, that's super nice, right? And those NES games were like $40 back in the day. Like, it's not cheap. But my parents paid them back, of course. But I grew up with a lot of people who loved video games, and I started writing about video games when I was 14, and I got hired at EGM when I was 17. So you're talking about childhood. EGM kind of was my childhood.
That was it. Holy cow! I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So, like, what are you writing at 14? Like, what point does that, in terms of, like, what games are you writing about at 14? And then where are you putting that?
Well, there was a magazine called Video Games and Computer Entertainment back in the 90s.
What did they write about?
90s. They did computer games, video games,
yeah.
You know.
I just love how, like, that's like the nerdiest title. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We just want to let you know exactly what is in this magazine. I love it. Perfect title.
That's right. They were mostly about toys and Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But they did an article about fan-made magazines, or fanzines, which is a thing in the music scene for a long time, and this column in there talked about fanzines that were about video games and that anybody could write them. So that's how I started. I started a fanzine and started sending it to that magazine, plus I would send copies to EGM, because for me EGM was local. I was like one suburb over from where the EGM offices
So you mentioned Chicago and San Francisco. So you're growing up around Chicago? Is that what that was?
I grew up in Chicago. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I only know of like one suburb of Chicago, and it's because of Wayne's World. So I know of Aurora, and that's it.
Right. I was in Naperville, Illinois, which is one away from Aurora.
Just missed it. Dang it. I should have been wearing my Blackhawks jersey. All right.
I was devastated to learn that the Wayne's World in the movie was not actually filmed in Aurora, Illinois. None of it was filmed there.
It's probably Vancouver. Everything seems to be filmed in Vancouver.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, where was I?
A fanzine. This is such an interesting, because to me, magazines did seem like this elite, like nobody could do it. You had to be part of this like publishing arm and be part of this machine. But for them to extend, like it's the age of the internet, really, where everybody has all the tools they could ever need to make whatever they want. And it's surprising for me to hear that back in the day of magazines, that invitation was extended. And I'm gathering that it was just there's still a need for content creators then, as maybe not so much now, but maybe they were looking for more people to contribute to the ever growing. I mean, magazines are going to be around forever, and we got to fill all these pages, so we need people to learn how to become part of this industry.
That's possible. I mean, a lot of people who are still in it got their start in fanzines as well, like Chris Kohler. I've known him for like 25 years since he was also a fanzine editor, and we talked on the phone occasionally and traded zines. And you know, it was a small thing, but a lot of people. It was a tight knit group, and kind of like websites or fan sites or things now, like, except now it's on a much larger scale and there are a lot more people doing it. But yeah, that was how I kind of got my feet wet in writing about games, and it was just reviewing games and writing opinion articles about games. Like it was.
Do you have any of it still?
I do, and it's embarrassing.
It'd be incredible to just have you guys read some of the old, and I think that goes for any writing. I think it's always cringy to go back, but especially, and I think even not so much that it was a while ago, but more that I think that the language and vocabulary and vernacular that we use now to describe and talk about games has matured so much. Like, it almost kind of makes you cringe a little bit when somebody says the graphics are great. But like, that was what we used to lead every conversation with, like, the graphics are amazing, and then I don't really know what else to talk about here.
But imagine this, like, imagine going back and reading something that you wrote when you were 14 or 15. Like, that's what it's like.
That's what it. Like, so what you wrote at 14, 15
about video games or whatever. Like, it's a different style.
Well, I think even like sometimes IGN goes back to, they pull up old pages, and like stuff that was published there is like, that's what we cared about. I mean, like, it's not necessarily a knock even on the writer. It's just that's what we expected. So like the writing was what delivered what the reader was sort of expecting in a sort of strange backwards kind of way.
Yeah, I think that's true. And back then, video game magazines were all about how many megs the cartridge was.
Oh, yeah.
How many layers of parallax scrolling do you have? And
well, we always have numbers
like that we don't care about now.
Well, now we have so many P's and frames per seconds and teraflops to worry about, or hours of battery life apparently on the, which actually turned out to be not a problem at all. Like, I remember about this time last year when we were learning about some of the specs of the Switch and just freaking out over every single one of them, and none of it mattered.
What do you mean, 4 to 5 hours of battery life? That's nothing.
God, my Vita does at least 6 hours. Like, and it probably, I mean, even my DualShock 4, I feel like doesn't really, the controller doesn't necessarily outlast the Switch. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the timeline writing for a magazine a little bit. So obviously now we can, like, this is going up tomorrow, so pretty instantaneous. But you needed to have access to games a little earlier. Like, the whole timeline of production adjusts when you're in magazines, but then for it to drop at a time that is relevant for the reader, like, how did all of that work? Did you just have earlier builds of games, or like, talk to me a little bit about the PR surrounding games when you need 3 months to when you have a 3-month lag between hitting print and having that drop in somebody's mailbox?
Yeah, I think it was it was a different time where not only did it take a month or at least a couple of weeks for a magazine to get printed and distributed, but it also took time to have a cartridge pressed or CDs pressed as well. So we often would get review copies of games several months early. And we tried to time our review for when the game was actually going to hit shelves, so that you'd be reading a game that came out in September. You'd be reading about it in the October issue of a magazine, because the way that magazines work, they want like everything to be, or the date on the cover is like a month ahead of when it's really on stands.
Right, that always messed me up.
Yeah, and in part it's so that bookstores don't throw you away on the last day of the month. They keep you on the shelves.
I never even thought of that. Of course, yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, which I didn't understand either until I got into it. It's like, why are we working on this issue when, it's a weird future thing. But so yeah, we would get builds of games that were either previewable or reviewable, and sometimes even the review copies weren't completely 100% done. They were just at a state where they felt you could write about it and attach a score to it. So I imagine now it's a lot different, where the lead time is a matter of weeks.
But you still get games that are broken, pre-release kind of things.
You do, yeah, that's true. But day one patches,
Well, that's what is allowing for. I'm not sure if I've lost you here. Let's see. Let me take a quick pause. Okay, there we're good. A lovely Skype. I'm gonna make sure that I mark down the time here, just so I can quickly get that out of there. We're 20. So I wanted to ask a little bit about kind of like what was your favorite kind of memory from writing for, I guess, like, even just walk me through walking in for the first day, where you go like like, were you a fan before of EGM? Like, was this sort of like, I can't believe this is like my dream job kind of thing, or was this just part of the way things were supposed to go for Chris Johnston?
No, this is not part of the things we're supposed to go. Walking into the office for the first time, it was great, because I had been reading the magazine for years at that point, and sort of knew everybody's persona in the magazine,
right,
or at
so
least
you see
I thought I did.
Yeah.
And it felt fine. I was walking in kind of as an intern, really. And I didn't even have my own computer for the first couple months that I worked there. I was working off of other people's machines.
Awesome.
And we had I had an optical disc that was mine, basically, and I could work on other people's computers
like a
when they were out
rewritable?
to lunch. Yeah.
That is amazing. Just the fact of using like a disc as like almost like a USB drive would be now, or I guess even a floppy disk before. Like, it always seemed very advanced if you had a rewritable. Like, you got to format that thing properly. You got to close up that disc properly at the end of it, or otherwise you can't when you're done burning that rewritable.
Oh yeah, and they would oftentimes die on you.
Yeah.
And get corrupted, and then all the work that you did was gone. So
that's why I'm surprised to hear you say that, just because in my experience with it, like, they were so unreliable and they cost a fortune. Like, they were worth 4 or 5, because it's almost like rechargeable batteries, I guess, in that sense. Or like,
yeah, exactly.
They would value them a little higher.
These weren't even zip discs or jazz discs. These were like discs. 5 1/4 discs. They were like, I don't even know. It was maybe 500 megabytes is what they stored. Like, it was bad.
So I'm gathering that, like, you were very similar back then. Like, you're very approachable, very, very nice. I don't get the sense that you walked in there like you were gonna wreck shop and show them how it's done. Like, what was was that a prevalent sort of personality in the games writing industry, or has that maybe become more of a thing, or were these just geeks writing about games?
It was just geeks writing about games. I think, back then, the prerequisite was that you were good at video games, not necessarily a good writer.
Oh, interesting.
And if you could take screenshots of things, or, master fighting games, it was more about that than if you were good at writing. And it wasn't like they were going out and using like a nationwide talent pool or anything like that. All the people I worked with were people who grew up in the Chicago suburbs and played video games at local arcades, and that was what it is.
So
almost everybody was like hired straight out of high school.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
So what were you good at? What was the thing that you're like, I know this, so you should hire me?
There was no one thing.
Just
actually.
everything.
I think
just good at
well,
video games. That's how adults really look at kids. Are you good at games? That's
yeah.
I rented for the first time. My library actually rents out video games, and of course, everybody working there.
Nice.
Not of course, but the first time I rented a game there, I discovered that you can rent them for 3 weeks, and I was very surprised at that. And the old lady librarian handed over to me, and I said, 3 weeks? That's incredible. I was not expecting that. She said, yes, you'll have so much time to get really good at this video game. And I hadn't thought of getting good at a game in like so long. That just seemed like kind of like you mentioned, it seemed like a yesterday kind of mentality of people's connection with games. Was, were you good at them? Where now, like, you don't really have to be good at them to appreciate or talk about them, which I think is super interesting.
Well, back then, when you opened a magazine, you wanted to see the hottest picks and tricks and
cheat codes.
Things like cheat codes. Exactly. Like it wasn't like you were opening a magazine to see a dissertation on why Metal Gear Solid is a bad stealth game or whatever. Like,
is it?
You didn't want to see that. No, I'm just making that up.
I was gonna say maybe there's a hot take or opinion that what is something like that you're like, oh, did I just say that? People are not necessarily gonna agree. Was there something maybe in the magazine that you wrote about that people did you get fan mail or hate mail or anything like that?
No, not that I can remember.
You're just so even keel, man. Like it's just like there's no pissing you off or anybody else off.
back in the day, when Wind Waker was first unveiled, and it was, that cell shaded look, very cartoony, and people called it Zelda. And
Zelda.
At that time, we did have an opinion piece in the magazine where some people were down on that cell shaded look, and I was like one of the only ones who was giving it the benefit of the doubt. And let's see what happens when this thing comes out. And I was also into anime, so that may have been why I was giving it the benefit of the doubt. But those opinions came later. In the mid '90s, you really kind of didn't give your opinion on a game unless you were reviewing it. Like, I did a preview of Bubsy 3D for the PS1.
Bubsy makes an appearance. I love it.
But you couldn't be negative about games in previews back then.
Oh, interesting. Was it sort of like an arrangement that you'd have had with, or was it an unspoken sort of agreement that you don't?
No, it was just the editorial position of the magazine where we weren't going to be negative about a game in a preview.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think that worked for what it was and the time that we're talking about. But I'm glad that changed, and it did, which was good. But I unfortunately got quoted on the box of Bubsy 3D. So, and I do have a copy of it. I need to frame it because it is one of my lifetime achievements.
That is incredible. A friend of mine, Ryan Turford from Game Moves Podcast, he is a huge Bubsy fan. He was totally thrilled that we were getting a Bubsy game this year, but maybe 2017 wasn't quite the right time to drop this thing.
No.
So when do you start to see like, oh, this magazine business maybe not going to be around forever? Like where were you at EGM, and then like what were sort of the signs that you saw? They're like, this isn't going to be around forever, maybe.
Well, I mean, that wasn't the conclusion that I came to when I jumped ship. I love magazines. I still love magazines.
I have an irrational love for magazines.
I mean, they're great, right? It's a little physical thing that you can flip through, and it's a nice time capsule of what people were playing and thinking about.
And they line up so nicely on the shelf. Like when everything matches, it touches a little of our OCD magic. Like, oh, that just looks, everything lines up. But you can see when they start changing where they put the date, and that always messes you up a little bit. But just having that like collection and that stack of 4,000 pounds of paper, and for some reason, that feels good. And every time you move, you put it in your Tupperware or whatever, or it crashes through your cardboard box, and you're like, I just need to have these stupid things. Even to this day, I walk through 7-Eleven or whatever, and I just stare at the magazine rack. I don't need the magazine. Like, I would have read all that stuff, but I don't know. It holds a very special place in my heart, that's for sure. So you didn't come to the conclusion that that this wasn't forever, but you left anyways. What was the journey?
I did. I had been news editor at EGM for like 8 years at that time, back in 2004 when I left. And you're right that the internet was kind of coming up and seemed like a good transition time. And I decided to jump ship to an anime magazine.
Oh.
I followed another editor, a guy who used to work at the PlayStation magazine at Ziff Davis. Gary Steinman left and went to work at New Type USA, which is an anime magazine that was based out of Texas. It was a U.S. version of a Japanese magazine, actually. We did translated stuff from there. And I was big into anime, and I thought that this would be a nice challenge. So that was where I jumped to. What
were the things that you were into? And also, how were you getting the I always found that there was some secret underground area or some passage that people who had access to anime, or because I didn't even have like cable, like I didn't even have like good TV, so anytime anybody had anything special, even when my neighbor showed me a tape of Ren and Stimpy, I thought he had like some magical connection to some TV land out there, but he just had cable.
Bootlegs.
Yeah, like, well, and then he introduced me to Dragon Ball Z, of course, but I never, even to this day, I'm thinking like, where the hell did he get those? Like, where did you get your anime? Were you importing? Was there, you had other magazines you were able to buy from? I guess I'm now picturing those big long lists at the back of magazines you could order things in.
Yeah, I was buying my anime at that time at Suncoast Video. I don't know if you remember that place.
No.
Maybe they didn't have them in Canada. It was basically like a big VHS and DVD store.
I love it.
And, internet speeds, we were all on dial-up that time. So we weren't downloading any anime at that time. We were buying tapes or buying DVDs that had like 4 episodes for, $30, $40, $50.
Yeah. Like the dedication is huge.
Yeah, that was where I was getting my stuff, and I still have quite a collection of anime, and that's where I was getting that. But luckily, the company that published New Type USA was also an anime company, so they got a lot of screeners that way, and it works kind of like video games where the publishers would send out screeners and whatnot. So,
right. And how long were you there for? I
was there until 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the anime market kind of died in the U.S. because fan subs and internet delivery was coming up and basically taking all of this, the idea that you had to buy DVDs with 4 episodes, it was sort of eating that lunch. Like nobody was doing that anymore. Crunchyroll was here, and people were getting their anime faster all over the internet. So
Crunchyroll is a thing that I have it on my phone. I have it everywhere, and I always go like one day I'm going to jump into that. Where do you think, so for somebody like, I feel like I'm probably like probably pretty average in that sense of, I know of Akira. I've seen it once. I've seen Dragon Balls, like the first couple of seasons. That's kind of it. Like I know of Frieza and Cell, but that, like mostly out of the games. Where should somebody like me jump into anime? I'm always curious. I've had a couple people
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Oh, really?
I can tell you, back in 2005, 2006, I could have given you some good recommendations, but now I've been out of it.
But doesn't it seem
so
timeless
long.
to you? Like maybe that's, as again, outsider looking in, it seems like anime, it doesn't even matter. And part of that, I'm assuming, is because by the time I ever got around to Dragon Ball, it was already 15, 20 years old, like just from being brought over. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think somebody else gave you a recommendation of Miyazaki movies, the Studio Ghibli stuff. You should definitely start there. I think you can watch that with your kid, and you get them on My Neighbor Totoro, and you'll be fine.
Good one. Yeah, I have seen a couple clips of that, and it's actually just because I keep bringing on Johnsons and Johnstons.
Exactly. That's why
it's been a streak. I gotta find.
I love anime.
I know, it's incredible, whether you live in the States or Australia or whatever it is. So then,
but I think after I worked at the anime magazine, I had overdosed on anime so much.
Oh
that
God, I thought you were going to tell me an awful story, Chris. Holy crap!
No, I didn't want to look at it anymore. It was actually similar to when I left EGM. I was kind of burnt out on video games, and I didn't play anything for like an 8-month period after I left EGM. So.
What did you miss? Do you remember? Like, is that like a memorable black hole that like you missed, like a Fallout game or something like that?
I don't think I missed anything big.
Like
the thing that brought
game.
me back was Halo 2.
Oh, okay. So that's the time period that we're looking at. Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you think about? Okay, so let's talk about Halo 2 for a second, because I remember. I feel like I'm the only one who remembers this. People were pissed when Halo 2 came out and you played as the elite and what the heck was it? The Arbiter.
Oh yeah.
For like a huge portion of this game. And now people look back at Halo 2 as like one of their favorites. How much time do we need for Halo 5 to be one of people's favorite games because you don't play as Chief?
I think that'll be a lot longer.
Like never.
Or never. Exactly. I mean, I think it's similar to, MGS2, where they switch the characters off.
That's way worse in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt anybody could pull something like that off today, just because so many people are connected and would know immediately that you don't play as such and such character.
Yeah, I mean, they could throw zombies in instead.
Yeah, I actually don't remember too many people getting upset. I was not upset about playing as the Arbiter. It was fine.
I thought it was fine too, but I wasn't nearly as like connected into the lore and everything. I didn't buy any of the books or anything like that. I didn't really like. I liked Halo. I just wasn't like skipping school for Halo or anything like that.
The interesting thing about that though is, do you feel like now the hardcore fans get disillusioned with something and then their opinion starts tainting the opinions of other more casual fans?
This is a hot topic for me, Chris. I am actually very sensitive to that because I get really worried when I listen to big podcasts with giant audiences, and sometimes somebody will say something and they won't think twice about it. They'll just, there's the opinion and it's out there, and then that starts to like gain a little momentum, or like, I don't even want to say the word because I hate that every single podcast. I actually am less upset about actual microtransactions as I was about the fact that it dominated the conversation in 2017 to such a. It was almost like we had so many other things to talk about this year, and unfortunately that it just seemed to like one person got really upset about it, and then somebody's kid spent $40,000 in Destiny or something stupid like that, and now we're getting like nobody had that. The conversation, maybe it's because we don't have thousands of podcasts about mobile gaming, but it didn't really happen there in the same way. And I don't want to derail there, but that was an unfortunate part of 2017.
Yeah, or like have a petition to have something changed, or what was it? I heard about there's a petition for The Last Jedi to have it stricken from canon or whatever.
Oh man.
Thinking like, would that have happened with Halo 2 back in the day?
Well, it happened with Mass Effect.
Yeah, Mass Effect.
Mass Effect 3, like they actually went in, and I mean, that was maybe a sign for Andromeda of bad things to come. Where is the confidence? Like there's one thing to be said, you should be listening to your fans and things like that, but the game was done, and then they sort of tried to retroactively kind of change it, and that pure that intelligence level, I think, from BioWare, that confidence of the vision where this universe is going and everything that they do, it just seemed like they had everything straight. And then this glimpse into, they're willing to, or maybe it's EA kind of forcing their hand a little bit. They're willing to change things. Where is like how rock solid is the foundation of Mass Effect? It turns out not very good, unfortunately. Yeah. I want to also. Actually, this brings me to another thing I want to ask you about. As somebody who podcasts but also publishes games, like how do you find, is there a conflict for you now to talk about the industry, but also as working at Adult Swim, is there conflict talking either poorly or at all about other games that may either compete or just live within the same spaces as the games that you're sort of responsible for making sure that they do well? Like kind of how does that, have you ever even thought of that?
I've never even thought of that, to be honest. Start talking about an Adult Swim game, the guys get very grumpy.
I know, even bringing it in your top 10, it's like, wow, my honorable mentions have to be the Adult Swim because they're ineligible.
That's right. I think it's different when you work on a game. You have a different feeling towards it. Yeah, you might think it's the greatest thing, but as a podcaster, I'm aware that the people listening to the show might not want to just hear that, right? Or I work on a lot of mobile games, but I don't think anybody who listens to Player One wants to hear about mobile games, so we don't talk about that stuff. Of course, I have plenty of opinions on mobile games, but I just don't share those on the show.
We have time, Chris. Let's have at it, because I gave it a shot. I actually played the first season of Walking Dead on iPad. And it was funny because I love that game so much that I ended up buying a friend, actually neighbor Matt, Walking Dead on 360. And I had never noticed, or maybe because I was playing on iPad, just how choppy it was, or maybe it was because it was on iPad, I sort of forgave it. And then I remember when he fired it up on that, I was a little embarrassed. I was like, I'm really sorry that I gave you this game, because it was just like, I don't know how it's unplayable when you don't really rely on motion or anything like that, or the actual controls don't really matter, but somehow it was unbearable, I guess. But like, what's happening in mobile that maybe people are missing out on right now? That like, what would you say if you had a moment in Player One Podcast to talk a little bit about mobile games?
Well, I mean, mobile games are a very different beast than console and PC games. I think the expectations people have are different. If you're playing a game on a mobile phone, you want something quick and fun that you can play while you're waiting at the doctor's office or waiting for the bus or something. It's not like you need a 20-plus hour experience. So you're willing to download a free game and give it a shot and maybe toss a few dollars their way. So I just think that it's a very different expectation from the player level. And I know there are a lot of people who hate free-to-play mobile games, but you're probably thinking about like one or two mobile games that you don't like. And if you actually like gave it a shot and looked around, you might find something that you would actually enjoy. There's a game that just came out recently, Arena of Valor, that's coming out for the Nintendo Switch in 2018. Actually, it's a MOBA, but it's a fun like mobile experience of the whole MOBA genre. And there's a couple battle royale games like PUBG on mobile too that you wouldn't expect there to be that type of game on there, but there it is. Is
that a China thing only, or is that making its way over here as well? How is that even going to work?
It works, and yeah, it is Chinese developers who are doing that.
What
but they have translated it into English, and a couple of those have launched here and are doing pretty well. So
that's right. But was it legitimate, or was it a knockoff? Because I think I saw something, like a graphic. It had like Santa Claus, but with a gun, and it was like Battle Royale Unknown something. It was like kind of like a mishmash of the names, just like a classic Chinese knockoff.
Oh yeah, there are plenty of those. Yeah, sure.
But there's a legitimate, like Tencent, I think, is actually doing is working on PUBG for real.
Yeah. I think you're right. They're bringing PUBG to mobile.
But
they have not yet.
How do you control it? For people watching the video, they can see me actually. Yeah, like
is that analog stick?
Are we okay with that? That actually stuck around?
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I mean, there are a couple games that do that. I mean, I think the games that work best on mobile are the ones that are touch enabled, and are games like Gorogoa or our match 3 games that you can easily play, or tappers and idle games that are easily playable when you have a short period of time. I don't necessarily think you need a console experience for those games.
I think the most important thing is that we don't write off really any. I think maybe we can write off the Ouya at this point, but I think to cast aside an entire segment of games is probably not the best, because then you definitely do miss out on. But my connection with you and mobile games maybe comes from Flash. Like, is there a strong connection with Flash-based games and mobile? Like, it's sort of like a simple, like just a quick time kill kind of thing. Is that where that love kind of carries over for you?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think part of it too is being accepting of games of all types. Like Bejeweled is a game, Words with Friends is a game, Candy Crush is a game. Like, the people who get into that really get into that, and for them it's an experience like Destiny 2 is for some console gamers. Like, they're really into it. I feel like any amount of game that you can really sink your teeth into is fine. Like, and we shouldn't degrade other people for for liking those games.
Well, certainly not the
experiences.
people. Like, I think maybe we can. Maybe it's a New Year's resolution that we can just kind of like move on from. If somebody doesn't like something, or if they do like something, just maybe just let them.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
we are learning too. Like, we are all socially awkward nerds who like grew up not talking to anybody, and now we're having like these deep conversations of art and what it means to enjoy the art or be connected to it. I think we're all trying to figure out like how to be better at that for sure. Well, maybe we are. I think you're actually really great at it.
You know, I mean, there are people who love soap operas, and then there are people who like, dramatic movies and The Walking Dead, and it's kind of that same receptor place in your brain, right? But it's just a different format.
However, I think if anybody's had an insight into the soap opera world, you'll know that that's a... If you like All My Children, you hate the people who watch Young and the Restless. They're the young,
I don't know anything
young
about
and the useless.
that world.
All right, well, actually, All My Children isn't even on, and I only know that because that was my mom's show, and that was her, like, she had her hour at 1 o'clock. That was it. And then the rest she was actually mothering, which I think is amazing. Now being a dad, like, if I had 1 hour and that was it, she had her cottage cheese and she threw some peaches in it. That was mom's time.
All right.
I don't know why, Chris. I don't know how I get to those places sometimes, man. I haven't even like, I got my coffee ready and I haven't poured it. I'm trying to be like not pouring coffee in the microphone. So this is all. Look at the bags under these eyes, Chris. Talk to me about Adult Swim. I want to talk about Adult Swim. Where does that come in? Like, and how do you make the transition from writing about games to publishing games? Those are, in my mind, totally different beasts.
It's not as different as you would think.
Okay,
really.
So now I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go publish a game. I'm not even really writing about games, so let's be honest.
I'm not a game developer.
Okay.
I know nothing about code, but I have played a lot of video games. And for me, working at Adult Swim, a lot of it is working with developers, right? And they're giving you early builds, or you're looking at a game design document and giving them feedback on things. And that's where having been a video game reviewer for a long time helps, because you're giving developers feedback that might make the end product better. And that was really how I got hired at Adult Swim. I loved Adult Swim. I watched the block a lot. I love cartoons in general, not just anime. And loved the content that they were putting out, and thought their foray into web games was really cool. They were doing some different stuff. You know, I think at that time we all thought of Flash games as like punch the monkey and get $5 off whatever. But they were doing something different, right? They were doing Viva Caligula and 5 Minutes to Kill Yourself and Candy Mountain Massacre. Like, they were doing really fun, quirky games on Flash. And when I got hired, they were in the middle of that. And I was hired to basically help developers make those Flash games for AdultSwim.com. And it was great.
And what was the point, I guess, is the .com there to like still drive traffic towards like the TV? Was there a path that they sort of had for people in mind, or was this just another element of entertainment coming from Adult Swim?
Not really. It was another form of entertainment coming from Adult Swim. They were pointing a lot of people to the website at that time. And instead of doing games based on shows, they decided to do games that were the same like tonal fit for Adult Swim, but not relating to the shows. Because I think if you do a show-based game, you only hit super fans of that show and nobody else, and the game has to be really good to satisfy fans of the show. So instead of going that direction, we kind of cast a wider net, which I thought was a great strategy for that.
Was that early on? Because I don't know necessarily, like, for people who don't know, maybe, like, what are some of the games that people may recognize but maybe don't associate necessarily with Adult Swim because it's not a show?
For instance.
Sorry, I think we're cutting out one more time.
Did I lose you?
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
Did you get the
back?
Yep, I think we're back, everybody.
Okay. Robot Unicorn Attack.
Okay. I don't know that one.
You don't know that one.
I know, and it's in your bio and
surprised.
everything. I know it. It's like you're satisfying everybody's dreams of fighting unicorns or something like that.
It was
tell
an
me about
endless
it.
Runner. There's an endless runner, side on endless runner, kind of like Cannibalt, where you're just jumping and running, and it has an erasure song always that plays in the background.
Yeah.
And that got really huge. That got way bigger than Adult Swim, which was great. And we brought that to mobile later, and it's done well there. But yeah, I think a lot of it was, bringing in an audience that wasn't necessarily familiar with Adult Swim's content and appealing to the same sort of comedic sense.
Right. And so now you guys are on Switch. You know, you've been PC pretty much from the start, Flash or whatever kind of iteration on a computer screen. Now coming to Switch. What do we got in store for 2018?
Well,
can you tell?
I'm not sure what we've announced.
Dang it!
Exactly.
I'm sure you've announced everything, Chris.
We put out Battle Chef Brigade.
Yes, this game is awesome, Chris. I'm so thankful that you sent me this game. I just am in love with it. It's so like you think you know what you're doing. You think you know what this game is, and then it's something totally different. And then you think you know how to play it, and then there's a new trick or something else. It just continues to grow. Yeah. Again, just it wasn't on my radar until I started hearing, of course you sent the code, but I also started hearing others in the community kind of like discover this game. And talk to me a little bit about that side of pushing games out and sort of being part of the conversation, but also hearing people kind of like pick it up and gaining a little momentum. Like, is that, for me, that would almost be all consuming. I would be scouring the internet trying to find out what or if people are talking about this game. But what happens when you hit send and then you can just kind of like sit back, or like what is it like for you as an individual to push out a game that people never link the individuals with, the developers or the publishers or whoever, any individual who's related to the game? The majority of people don't connect a person with it. They just judge it based on that game. So, but there's obviously a person on this side waiting for feedback or something. What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, Battle Chef Brigade, you know, there are a lot of people on the Adult Swim Games team that are more responsible for Battle Chef than I am. I'm just a cheerleader for that game in general. You know, it was great seeing that game come out because we had been talking with Trinket Studios for years. It was like 4 or 5 GDCs ago. We had a meeting with them to see an early build. This was, I think, before they did a Kickstarter for it, and I just thought it was great. It was a great mashup of mechanics, and the art style was awesome, and the way that they wanted to tell this story sounded great, and it's been awesome to see just the development of that game over time. And when they finally did sign with us, which wasn't for another 2 or 3 years after that GDC where I first saw that game, it's just great. And I feel super happy for the developers of the game, Trinket Studios. They're getting a lot of love on social media, and just very well deserved because they've created a fantastic game. And Jacob Paul is the producer from Adult Swim who was working with them on it, and he definitely helped them refine some things. And one of our staff members, Megan Fosty, wrote a lot of the script for it as well. So it's just been great to see a lot of commentary on it. I've watched all the YouTube videos that people have done on the game. Like, it's fantastic to just kind of watch everything play out, because you've been familiar with the game for so long, right? And then you want to see as many people talk about it as possible and get that word out. And it's awesome to see. It is a lot of fun. Talking about. I lose you again?
Yeah, a couple times. This is it's, you know, it's never really a great thing to hear, but it's never happened before.
That's weird.
We heard that from when Chelsea was actually in labor. There was a couple times like, I've never seen it. It's like, nope, that's not what you say right now. That's not great. Chris, we'll round things out with the question that I typically ask near the end. Actually, it's kind of nice because we have a brand new year ahead of us. What in 2018 are you sort of like, have you got your eye on? Or maybe even like, what do you expect to happen that's going to be sort of like a big deal for people?
in general?
Because yeah, just in video games, I guess. Because like 2017 just seems like a hard year to follow up. And I know that we have a lot of games on the horizon, but to be honest, like video games could take a break for a year, and I would be perfectly fine with it.
I don't know that I would be perfectly fine with it.
You
I always
have
want
to have
something new to play.
Yeah. Oh, I went crazy, man. I got a whole bunch of gift cards for Christmas, and I went through every single digital store and Boxing Day sale here, which is day after Christmas here, and I went nuts. I've got enough games to last me the next 3 years. But what's coming? What's coming that's piquing your interest for 2018?
Well, I can't wait to see what Nintendo does with the Switch.
Yeah.
Really, like we at the beginning of 2017, when they basically laid everything out for the year, we knew what to expect. I feel like now we don't really know what to expect from the Switch at all.
Is that good or bad in your mind?
I think that's good.
Or is it just okay? Yeah. Okay. A little mystery.
Good, actually. I mean, I like surprises. Don't you like surprises?
I love surprises. That's the thing. Like, but I'm on two minds of it too. Like, I like knowing that there's a Metroid coming, but yeah, it is kind of like you kind of just tore open the wrapping paper on your present just a little bit, and you saw just what's inside, but you don't really know what it is, or like.
We know nothing about it.
Yeah, like. But is that okay? I don't know, man.
I think that's okay. But I think it has to be nerve-wracking for the people who are working on that game to see how it's going to be perceived once they actually do reveal it, right? And they're probably hoping that it won't be another Federation force. For sure.
The Last Jedi might be one of those things where maybe just don't let people know, or don't let people's imaginations run wild, because the disappointment was born out of all these fan theories that came that people thought were canon, and then when the canon came out, they were disappointed because their stuff wasn't real. So. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think Nintendo has the most mystery surrounding their lineup, like how they're going to attack things, right? So that part of it's exciting. Like, I love it when at E3 they were like, "Here's this Metroid Samus Returns game," and it's out in like 2 months. I loved that.
Yeah, that's a nice thing that's sort of taken hold a little bit. In some cases working out well, and I think people are still trying to figure out what there's going to be that magic timeline that they can kind of go, oh, is 6 weeks good, or is 2 months, or like is Fallout the way that you do things? I think there are games that are launching with a bit of. Like they pick their date where they're going to say, and it's available now. And like, it's risky. Like Sega knows that better than most. Obviously console a little bit different, but yeah, I'm liking this. It feeds into the instant gratification of the internet now. So that's kind of neat. And I also think I'm going to point out how there's a lot of mystery between Nintendo and Xbox. What are these guys doing this year? But people have a lot more optimism on Nintendo side, whereas you look at Xbox and go, there's a similar amount of mystery, but it's surrounded by a lot of negativity of, oh, they're doomed.
Yeah.
Surely the Xbox is on its way out, and this three-way console war can't exist forever. This is a two-man game, so.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, but even back in the day, I owned both a Sega Genesis and a Super Nintendo. Like I played the games and not the platform that they were on.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's important to remember that we're all here about the games, right? And no matter the platform.
I just spent a fortune on Steam, and like I don't even know why I did that, but like because I don't really find myself in this chair other than to do this. But like I've got an Xbox here, I've got all the consoles. It's just a matter of like what's grabbing my attention, to be honest. And it's not. The console wars they're sort of fun if you can keep it lighthearted and know that you're going to be friends with the person at the end of the day. They're fun to have those kind of conversations. What store is better, or who has the better sales, or PlayStation Plus versus Games with Gold and things like that. But at the end of the day, you're right. Like, where is the game going to be played, and where do you fit in with that? And it doesn't really matter in the end.
Yeah.
But then what are we going to podcast about?
What do you want to see out of 2018? What are you most
I
excited
am interested in seeing so similar to you with Nintendo, I am interested to see what Xbox has in store. I have a sense that it's not going to wow anybody, but I'm sort of, I've got my hopes up. I threw out I was just talking to Bobby this morning about this idea that of reboots, and do reboots sort of like re-engage or recapture audiences, or bring in new people that maybe they hadn't before. And I think Halo, in a sense, might need a reboot, but they're sort of like stuck in the middle of this. They need that final chapter of the trilogy now, and you need to see what's happened with Cortana and blah blah blah. But I'm like, man, they could really throw a wrench into the industry and say, Halo is one of the biggest franchises in video game history. Now it's a Destiny game. Now it's like this giant open world that you can travel all these planets. Halo's got this huge lore, and you can be a Master Chief, or you can be a Spartan or somebody in this world. And now that's what that is. And to have 343 up against Bungie, I think would also be super interesting. And I don't know, I think there's a lot there, but I think they need to do something drastically different to recapture some of that magic, whether it is with Halo or something new. And I'm hoping that I get something there.